Hello there. Welcome to this graduate course on the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas on the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. Many of those who are taking the course this semester have taken my course already on the one and the many in St. Thomas and that metaphysics course. And so you have some familiarity with my background. For those of you who have no familiarity with it, I'm a retired professor of philosophy from St. John's University in New York. I'm rector of the Adler Aquinas Institute and a senior fellow at the Center for the Study of the Great Ideas, and also the CEO of a company called the Aquinas School of Leadership, as well as doing adjunct teaching presently for Holy Apostles College and Seminary in Cromwell, Connecticut. I've been teaching on the university level, college level, for over 45 years. I have a specialization in St. Thomas, as well as in the history of philosophy, or what I think would be better called Western intellectual history, because most of Western intellectual history considers aspects of intellectual work that are non-philosophical. But anyway, I don't want to go into too much detail about my background, because we're going to cover a lot of material in this course, and you can always check that material out online, or find out more information about me from going to my website at the Aquinas School of Leadership. This course is going to be divided mainly into 6 parts. 4 of the parts will be repeated each week. And as I go over the course, one of the things that I'm going to do, since we're covering a great deal of information, is periodically to look down at my notes so that I try not to miss any important information. Each week we're going to have a video for the students to look at. Hopefully that video won't go more than an hour. It should go about 50 minutes, but depending upon the content, it might go a bit longer than an hour. Related to the video will be required readings. There'll be also some suggested readings, not many, but a few. Pretty much all of the readings will be from St. Thomas and his commentary on the works of Aristotle. That will be followed by a 2-hour class discussion if I'm teaching a course on one evening, and then during the week a 1-hour course, which hopefully will involve students chiefly doing the discussion, depending upon the number of students. If there are not enough students registered for the course so that we can do the online discussion, then what you'll be doing will be sending me summaries of the video, as well as doing a paper at the end of the semester, what I call a syntopical paper, which will either compare teachings of St. Thomas in different works one to another, or teaching of St. Thomas about a different topic and someone else. So the class discussion, the video, the required readings, the class discussion, the 2 class discussions will be going on every week, and then there'll be a course paper at the end of the semester, and that will be posted for you online if we are conducting the course via a site, say like Populi, where students can go to the site. If I'm not teaching the course, somebody else might just be presenting you with this video, and in addition to the required readings, have some other readings that they would like you to do. Okay? That'll give you just a brief background of me and of the work required in the course. The details are listed in the syllabus and also in a transcript of topics that accompany the video. What I want to do is start out this course the way I'd start out every course pretty much that I've taught for a number of years, at least within the, say, last 20 years or 30 years I was doing teaching on campus. And that is to ask you five ask you five questions. The first of which is precisely who are you? All of the questions are precise. Precisely who are you? Where are you? How did you get here? Why are you chiefly here? And where are you going from here? Now, I ask you these questions because the only way people can communicate effectively one with another is to the extent that they share a common interest. They share something in common to the sense that, as people would say today, that they're on the same page, or that they have a sense of belonging to the same organization and have the same end. Whenever I come into a new situation, whenever anybody comes into a new situation, we're coming into a situation with which we're somewhat unfamiliar territory. And so I consider that as a kind of territory where I'm lost. And to figure out how to progress when there's more than one individual and we have to cooperate, is to figure out how we share some sort of a common interest, a common aim. And that puts us into a kind of an organization, or what St. Thomas would call a genus. Because it's only within the context of a genus or an organization we can start to make comparisons that relate to a common activity. If we have no common activity, then the comparisons that we make and what we more or less try to do, it's just not going to be headed in the same direction. So I ask you these questions because people have different purposes, different chief aims for why they're taking a course. Some do it for economic reasons. They might want economic advancement. Some do it because they're interested in acquiring information or improving their understanding. Some people do take classes for enjoyment. It's the same thing with respect to teaching classes. I consider myself simply to be a better student, and my chief aim in conducting a course is to get at the truth of things for the purpose of helping me to improve my life, to live a happier life. And along the way, if there are other purposes for which the course is designed, to also include those as part of the chief aim. So if I were doing this course, for example, for purposes of executive training, and not only would I want to make people happy, but I want to make people happy and happier in their professional life, so that getting at the truth of things would improve their ability to do a particular type of work, which might be the aim for you taking this class. For example, you might want to do it to improve your skills at understanding how to engage in more prudent decision making, or to understand your emotions better, to get a better appreciation of objects and their weaknesses and strengths, all of which we'll cover to some extent in this class. So, but if you're not chiefly here for the purpose of improving your life and improving it just in general or in a professional capacity. But for some other reason, well, whatever your chief purpose is, your chief aim is going to determine how much you're going to get out of the class. Okay? And it's just something I like to have students think about before going on, because we're going to be spending a lot of time in this course, and I prefer you not to waste your time, because time is valuable. And I also like, when I start a course, to make reference to two quotes that continually help me to focus on what I'm doing. One is this citation from Aristotle that he gives in On the Heavens and the Earth, that small mistakes in the beginning tend to lead to larger mistakes, more numerous mistakes down the road. And a quote from the great Catholic intellectual Etienne Gilson, who said that most philosophical mistakes start from badly framed questions. Okay, so I want to start this course by making sure that we're not making any small mistakes in the beginning, and the best way to do that is to ask the right questions. Now, in proceeding to deal with the question of the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly, right? In this first class, what I'm going to do right at this first of two videos. Every week we'll have the lectures will be divided into two videos, so that we're not spending an entire class on a 50-minute video, but a 25, 30-minute, maybe 35-minute video, and then coming back to do another video. Starting this course on the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly, since St. Thomas Aquinas was a theologian and he focused attention on studying topics from the standpoint of theology, chiefly, I want to start with what he has to say about the office of the wise man, since this is a course in philosophy. And St. Thomas thought that the job of the philosopher as well as of the theologian was the pursuit of wisdom. To start with what he says at the beginning of his masterful Summa contra Gentiles, where he says that the business of the philosopher, according to both Aristotle and what the many say, what most people say, is to set things in order and govern them well. That is, a person who's pursuing wisdom is to some extent interested in order, is interested in a relation of parts and wholes, and wants to know how the parts and wholes are related to an end. Right? Now, the reason that St. Thomas refers to the many is because for two reasons at least. One is because for him the study of philosophy, as it was for the ancient Greeks, always involves the study of the one and the many. And what the many say about things, both St. Thomas and Aristotle thought, could not be totally wrong, and that the way we chiefly tend to name things, at least not in a non-professional way at the beginning, is by taking the way things are named from the way most people refer to them. Now, in saying that the office of the wise man is to set things in order and govern them well, to understand the nature of order, St. Thomas says, well, we chiefly get our understanding of order from an end. And this notion of an end is widely misunderstood both in the teaching of Aristotle and in the teaching of St. Thomas. What they mean by an end is an initial act that's what today we would call an external stimulus, either for a some sort of existing thing, or for a human being. Ends for human beings, or aims, they call purposes. But they don't consider inanimate beings to have purposes. But inanimate beings do have ends, in the sense that they have external stimuli which affect their internal organization. And with respect to human beings, the end is an external stimulus that motivates, that causes a subject to move toward it, to attract it as a subject with which it seeks to be united. For example, the chief end of firefighters is to put out the fire. Okay? If people have no interest in fighting fires, and if their cooperative last act is not to put out the fire, then they can never cooperate in an orderly way. So wherever St. Thomas and Aristotle find a multitude of beings acting cooperatively to generate a single act, that last act is their first in intention. It's what they first seek to do. Without the external stimulus, there is no unification of this multitude to become parts of a whole. And when St. Thomas and Aristotle are talking about the natures of things, what they're chiefly talking about is what today we call an organization. A multitude made up of parts. And parts cannot exist unless there's a relationship between or among members of a multitude and a common act. Disconnected multitudes that have no relationship to a common action are not parts of a whole. If you have parts of a whole, you have an aim. The aim exists in the beginning. It's there right from the very start. Just as St. Thomas would consider a maturely developed person, human being, to be present in an immaturely developed way right from the beginning in a human being, or a person who's seeking to drive from New York City to Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York is in the beginning as part of this operation, this organizational activity. If it's not there from the start, then you have a different activity. Right? But any singular act that's composite has an aim, something that has motivated, moved a multitude to be attracted toward it, and has established a relationship among the parts, among the multitude, to transform them into parts of a whole. So St. Thomas says that we take the rule of government, the order for all things directed toward an end, from the end, from what's externally stimulating us in the beginning. That can be a conscious object of desire, right? Or it could be something else that's exercising a kind of magnetic attraction on something. But the union with the end, right, is what interests people who are concerned about order. And that's one of the chief elements that they seek to understand. St. Thomas also maintains that everything is best disposed or ordered when it is fittingly or proportionately ordered to its end, when its parts, that is, are unequally ordered. Now this notion of being proportionately ordered is very important. St. Thomas will use this notion of proportion repeatedly throughout different writings. And he'll refer to it in other terms like suitable or fitting, because nothing moves toward something that it does not have the power in some way to be attracted towards or be attracted by. St. Thomas will call that a proportionate kind of relationship. Wherever you have an agent and something being acted upon where one is stimulating the other, there has to be some sort of proportion, some sort of equality between the giver and the receiver. And because he says that everything that is best disposed or ordered is done so by having an inequality of the relationship among the parts, he's saying that things are best ordered when they are members, parts of a composite whole or an organization. So basically, when he's saying that the office of the wise man is to set things in order and govern them well, what he's saying is the office of a person who has wisdom is to be able to establish organizations and to understand their natures, right? To understand what makes them to be organizations. In fact, I maintain that the ancient Greeks themselves, this was their chief area of interest in doing philosophy. The problem of the one and the many for the ancient Greeks was not simply a problem for ancient physicists. It was the problem of ancient philosophy, and trying to understand what are organizations, how do organizations differ one from another, what holds them together, what causes them to be broken apart. Unity holds them together in some way, and unity for the ancient Greeks was chiefly a quality. And organizations differ on the basis of the quality of unity that causes them to be united, which quality in a way gives them their good. So there's a direct connection between the study of the problem of the one and the many and the study of the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. Now, according to St. Thomas, because all things are best disposed when they're fittingly or proportionately ordered, the wholes that are studied are composed of contraries, of parts that are more or less perfect, unequal parts, right? Somewhat, to some extent, unequal parts that unequally contribute something to the achievement of an end. To say that they're unequal doesn't mean that they don't contribute something that is significantly important to the achievement of an act. The person, for example, who's carrying out an activity that is not that of a commanding general, nonetheless in tactical operations will win a victory for an army, and will be doing something that perhaps the general couldn't do. Right? The general commands in a more general way. The person on in the field, the sergeant, for example, commands in a more individual way and does something that the general couldn't. But the point is that their expertise has to be unequal, and unequal in its own perfections, to contribute to the harmonious operation of the whole. Because of this, he maintains that arts are architectonically arranged. One is the means to the good of the other, as one art acts for the end of another. Aristotle gives this example where he says that the art of use governs the art of producing. That is, the art of sailing governs the art of shipbuilding, and which is one of the examples that St. Thomas gives, or how the art of horsemanship governs the art of weapons production, of someone who is an equestrian in an army, or the as I already mentioned, the art of use governs any art of production. Now, the arts that govern the ends of the particular generic wholes, he says, reaches none of the arts, he says, that govern the ends of the particular generic wholes reaches the end of all generic wholes. None of the particular arts studies the end of the entire universe. Hence, he maintains that the wise person in a particular area of study, in a particular area of organization, of organizational expertise, is not the absolutely wise person. It's not the person who's unqualifiably wise. The absolutely wise person, he says, considers the ends of the universe. Right? And so the best of inquirers, the person who's most scientific for St. Thomas is going to be the philosophical metaphysician and the theologian, and absolutely speaking would be the theologian. And since the end of the intellect, which is the most perfect of all agencies within the physical universe, is truth, then the end of the wise man, as he puts it, must be chiefly aimed at understanding truth, and not just this or that truth, but understanding the truth for which the entire universe exists. And Aristotle confirms that metaphysics is the science of first truth, the truth that is the origin of all truth. Okay? The job of every science, then, according to St. Thomas, is actually twofold. It's to know the truth, because science studies multitudes, because it studies an organization, and organizations are made of more or less perfect parts, species of members of the organization. It studies contrary opposites, one which is the most perfect, and the one which is the least perfect, extremes. And so every science seeks to understand the truth and promote it, pursue it, as well as to oppose an error, or oppose errors to this chief truth. Like the art of medicine seeks to promote health, and it seeks to fight disease. Every art, according to St. Thomas, considers contraries. It considers a multitude of beings that are related, exist in a relationship toward a particular activity. Either that's being observed, right? In the case of speculative arts and speculative science, or that a person or a group of people are seeking to generate, to cause to come into existence. The metaphysician, especially, he says, has the job to meditate about the nature of truth, belonging to the first truth of everything, to teach this truth to others, and to refute opposing errors. Right? Now, knowing the order of one thing to another, he says, is exclusively that of the intellect, and not of that of the senses. To some extent, the senses participate in this, but the senses report to us, the external senses, the way things appear, right? And they have a kind of unity to them, but the external senses, in fact, the external senses apprehend that unity in a kind of generic way, right? As St. Thomas says, what we first sense is not this or that individual, like a person like David Hume tends to think, but we first sense is some unfamiliar stuff, an unfamiliar something, right? And then as we become familiar with it, we get its specific difference and we can define it more precisely. This is why in starting this course, what we're starting with is something that is strange. Our first sensation is always of something strange, something a little bit alien, and unfamiliar because it's not sensed with memory, especially those things which we initially sense as human beings in first coming to know. Now, in a fourfold way, he says, right at the start of his commentary on the Nicomachean Ethics, that human reason is concerned with a fourfold order, but that fourfold order is related to a more generic order, right? That exists in everything, or every physical thing, or composite thing. He says of parts to parts, of one part to another, and of the part to a whole. The parts of a whole to the end of a whole, like the parts of a whole army to the whole army, because of the order that's given to the whole army through a commanding general. Now this is very important. St. Thomas says this at the start of his commentary on the Nicomachean Ethics. He makes this observation, right, regarding and repeating what's said in his Summa Contra Gentiles, that the office of the wise man is to set things in order and govern them well. That the person who's concerned with ethics, who's concerned with the moral good, is also concerned with part-whole relationships, and all science is concerned with the relationship of parts to parts and parts to wholes in relationship to a chief act that is in some way given by an external stimulus to a major part within the organization, a commander, right? And is communicated to the multitude, because St. Thomas considers all organizations to be what we today would call communications networks. In fact, that's what Aristotle basically understood by a substance. A substance was a kind of self-arranging organization, a communications network that is developing a relationship among its parts according to a chief activity that it seeks to generate more than any other kind of activity. This commentary on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is a marvelous work for understanding the nature of science as a whole, considered as a whole. Philosophy considered as a whole, according to Aristotle and St. Thomas. And it seems to me to be a much better representation of what human beings, when they talk about arts and sciences, generally understand arts and sciences to be or to consist in, rather than the kind of narrow reductionistic understanding of science that we have today, which tends to reduce it to mathematical physics. So there's a fourfold order in things according to St. Thomas and Aristotle too. One, he says, which is human beings observe in things, but we don't generate in them. We don't cause. That's a kind of a speculative order, or theoretical. And then one which we cause in our own acts, which of judging and reasoning when we arrange concepts and signs of concepts among themselves, like in logic, or what St. Thomas, using the term that was common at the University of Paris at the time, would call rational philosophy. But strictly speaking, he didn't consider philosophy. logic being a tool that the philosopher uses, and philosophy basically studying the natures of things according to different habits of mind. And then a third type of order, which we cause in the operations of our wills, which is ethics, and which we cause in external things when producing houses and the like, he says, mechanical arts and fine arts. So there's a fourfold way, he says, that order relates to human reason. With respect to speculation, just observing order in things, causing order in things. With respect to logic, causing order in the will, chiefly, or in the appetites, in relationship to ethics, and in relationship to practical activities and productions in which we engage. That's a magnificent summary of the whole of artistic activity and scientific activity that St. Thomas gives. He says that reason is perfected by habit, and especially by the habit of wisdom, through the difficult order in composite wholes that reason considers in particular. Reason develops within itself an architectonically arranged order of habits. So, in relationship to the order that exists in things, reason develops. The human intellect tends to generate within itself an order of habits that's proportionate in power to the qualitatively different compositions that exist outside in things. And it's that differentiation within the habits of mind, proportionately related to the qualitatively different composition in things, those qualitatively different wholes, that the divisions and the methods of the sciences develop. The differentiation of the sciences and the arts arises from this architectonic differentiation in habits of the soul, qualities of soul that are the means related to perfecting the intellect and grasping the organizational unity that exists in things, which is the truth in things. Through this qualitatively different apprehension, the intellect perfects its own operations qualitatively, becomes more virtuous, and through it does this as a result of working through what it observes as order in composite wholes, and causing order within its own operations. Just as the subject of physics is the part-whole relationships existing within composite physical wholes ordered toward generating motion, the subject of moral philosophy, he says, is the part-whole relationships existing within human beings that generate voluntary actions. Hence, ethics does not study vegetative acts, it studies freely chosen acts. That makes human beings, properly speaking, specifically human, and involved in human relationships, as Aristotle would say. So, given that as a background, I'm going to leave off there and come back and talk to you in a little bit about the meaning of the good. And I hope you enjoyed this initial introduction, and we still have a lot to cover today, and I expect that we'll be going over an hour in this initial lecture video for this course on the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. Thank you much. Be right back.